We'll start with introductions. My name is Garrett Sauls. I'm content manager at Interworks. My job is just essentially working with our team and working with external people like Annabelle and Nisa on just having fun conversations and sharing knowledge out into the world. But I will pitch it over to Annabelle and Nisa, who are much more interested and much more into the enablement and data field than I am as a humble marketer. But Annabelle, you want to give a quick introduction about yourself?
Thank you. So a very warm welcome also from my side. My name is Annabelle Lincoln. I'm living in Switzerland. It's foggy today. I have 15 years experience in data analytics, 10 years leading teams of data analysts from different size and location. In my last role, I was leading a center of enablement, and I'm truly convinced that enablement is a key to success of the data analytic platform implementation or any digital transformation in the company. That is why we came up with Garrett about this enablement webinar series. And in order to learn from the best in the market and create also some awareness on this important topic. So today it's a great honor that I'm receiving Nisa Marques. Thank you, Nisa, for being our speaker. I will do a very short introduction. I will let you deep dive into your experience. Nisa Marques is currently the Analytics Insight Senior Lead at Mars, and she has a wide range of experience spanning consulting, analytics, strategy, and enablement. Nisa, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here, Garrett and Annabelle, and for your kind words. I'm really happy to talk about enablement with all of you. So as Annabelle mentioned, I'm Nisa Marques. I'm part of Mars as an Analytics Insight Senior Lead. So I have around a decade of experience in data and analytics on the business side, but also on consulting. And in terms of what is my role and what I do, it's quite wide, the scope. So I lead teams in project-based projects, creating and establishing some programs of digital upskilling. We also work with other teams, such platform teams for platform health, or even governance, or even emerging trends. And on the part of the emerging trends is seeing how we can address new business use cases with those emerging trends, but also how can we incorporate that in data literacy, which I'm also very passionate about. In terms of background, I have a background in health, where I was a clinical practitioner for several years. And then it's when I did that move into data analytics. So that's me in a very short nutshell. And thank you so much for joining us today. And I welcome any questions you may have.
Absolutely. What a great introduction. Yeah, I love it. I love having two very experienced people with data enablement because I know you all have just seen so much in terms of how data and enablement have evolved as kind of tools and platforms as have evolved and users have evolved in their relationship with data. And so it's just a general note to say I love this series and especially having you on here, Nisa. Thanks for joining. And yes, of course, thanks to everyone joining us to listen to this conversation. I'm curious, this is kind of like a big question. It's a broad question. There's no right or wrong answer, but it's one that I like asking of people. But Nisa, how would you define enablement? When we ask like what is enablement, what comes to mind for you, or what are those like core pieces?
So for me, in terms of the enablement, is empowering people to understand and talk about a topic, a digital topic that encompasses data and analytics. For me, that is the core part of enablement, and empowering people to feel comfortable to follow up their journey, to talk with others, and not be just in a situation where they hear new jargon and they feel afraid and they just will nod along and say yes because you don't understand quite well.
Yeah.
And what do you think?
And you just talk about that, but do you have strategy for empowering people to feel confident in the data use?
Yeah, of course. So the first strategy for me, and that is my opinion, I see the upskilling programs as a user-centric approach. But it is a user-centric approach that is aligned with a goal, so a business goal, a strategy. And it's starting with concepts where people will come in just to see the art of possible and how that fits in the environment that they are in. Because once they understand that portion, it's easier then for them to engage on anything new that you may bring. Because if you just bring something that is new and you tell someone, and I talk by experience, but if someone comes to me and say, you have to learn this because I'm telling you it's important for you, may not go very well, right? I may do it, but it doesn't, you don't create that empathy with the subject, right?
That's true. And if you learn something because you are forced, it's much more difficult.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
learn better when you have fun. For instance, I trying to learn German. It's very complicated, but you know.
But that's the thing. It can be complex concepts.
Yes.
But if you can understand where that concept fits in the big scheme of things, it's easier for you to embrace.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious, how do those strategies differ when you're talking about different types of users? You know, when we look at enablement generally, what types of users do we have? I know sometimes we define them as technical users, non-technical, or business users. So how do you kind of support the different journeys for each of those people? What are those strategies like that you've seen work for those different types of users?
I think even having different types of users, we have to establish what is your baseline, right? Because you may have more established users that still there are some gaps on the fundamental knowledge. And this is where the data literacy comes in. So starting with concepts that will be your baseline. Let's bring everyone to the same level. Even for some users, it is a repetition. Let's start there because then you're ensure that people will be on the stage, that they are ready for the next step. But of course, as I said, it's a user-centric approach, or you have to see really what are you trying to achieve. Because when we talk about enablement and upskill programs, they can be very different for different people and different businesses.
Mm-hmm.
So your goal is just technical training. That doesn't take any value of being an enablement program, but your goal is just training technically.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is to upskill people and making them more digital savvy and create that equity, then you have to see what are the needs of the audience that you have and maybe cater different small programs depending on the audience that you have.
Mm-hmm.
I have seen a lot of benefits on that. And I remember that I used to run like a little bit of data literacy and data visualization and storytelling introduction. And a lot of people got curious, and even people who doesn't use data on the daily life, but because they were like talk a little bit on this introduction about data storytelling, they could really use it on their PowerPoint. So they were able to make like much more impactful PowerPoint after that. So yeah, you can see the benefit in every level of the organization. It's quite cool.
You touched a point there, like storytelling is a great example. It's very important, right? Because you can have a solution that is technically amazing, visually very appealing, but if you cannot tell the story on present the insights you have for the people that will use that solution for decision making, then it kind of falls through the floor what you did, because it can be all amazing, but it's not having the so what, as we know. But on the storytelling, what I normally like to do is even start before the part of digital and data analytics. As you said, all of us, we have business knowledge, we have information that we need to share with different audiences. And starting with that data literacy before data and analytics and digital, just showing people how they will tell the story to a different audience, because senior leader will receive and consume the information very differently from an analyst, right?
Yeah.
And that is a perfect example. For me, is one of the things that I encourage people to do is learn even to present. It can be a PowerPoint, right? How would you present this to a senior level? And how would you present this to your colleague that is on the same business understanding and technical understanding than you are?
Mm-hmm.
And that then you can translate very easily for data and analytics.
I love that concept. This is something I feel the more we talk with other data and enablement professionals, this idea of what enablement is inclusive of. So of course, there we talk about the upskilling and the training, and sure, that's part of an enablement program and building pathways for people to do that and developing data literacy. But that communication aspect of it is really big as well, as you said, the ability to not only be able to interpret and access data, but for those different users to be able to communicate those insights, for them to read them reliably and then communicate them to their groups. Like if you're a C-level person, being able to communicate that at a board meeting or whatever it may be, right, is just as an important part of enablement as the actual usage of the tool or the dashboards or whatever it may be themselves. Because if you're not communicating an idea, it's not gonna take hold with people. That's that story component, right? If you're not telling a story, it's not going to be as sticky as I'm looking at a bunch of numbers and I don't know how to contextualize this in the broader, sense of the business.
And I put my hands in the air because when I was starting, I was like that too. So when you are doing your analysis and you are bringing more data in and you find things that are interesting and you're like, oh my God, this is so interesting. This is insight. So I'll put this here and I will explain you, walk you through this. But then for a leader, what they want is, okay, you present all this story to me. You gave me all these insights. What do you want me to do when we finish this meeting? So what is interesting for us as insights many times is not actionable. And this is the part that is also important to understand, even in a PowerPoint. So if you are presenting a one-pager to a leader, when you have that half an hour meeting with them, what is the key thing that you want them to do as soon as that meeting finishes?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And sometimes our passion kind of drives us away from that.
Yeah.
And usually I had a slide, what I am expecting from you. With 3 bullet points. But yes, that's it. And when you give best practice, when you explain best practice on the dashboard or whatever, I also explain the best practice in terms of visualization on this introduction course. And a lot of people use it on the PowerPoint. Because the same is what if you have a white background on your PowerPoint and you put like big number in yellow, it will not work very well. It's exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and this normally one of the advice when someone's starting a career that you tell them. It's good to have technical skills, very good indeed, in data and analytics, but also don't forget the soft skills, that communication piece, because that will be your mean or your channel of communicating all the technical that you apply in the back and how you got there.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite useful in several areas, right?
Absolutely. I think on that subject, I'm curious, when you talk about building trust, right? You talk about getting people in the same room or speaking the same language or on the same page as analytics. What are some things that you've seen work? And that could be for a specific group. We talk about like executive advocacy. How do you get them plugged in and engaged and built trust in the analytics or just in the culture of what you're trying to do? Or similarly, just any group that you're working with, business users, technical users. What are some of those things that you've seen in your career that have really been like, it really clicked when I did this?
Senior leadership, it does depend if you have a technical leadership or not. Sometimes you don't have so much technical leadership. So it's good to start, at least what I have seen working, is showing them the art of possible. Because if they don't know how that fits and what to ask from their teams, it's very hard for you to have that buy-in. In terms of the people that work with data, and normally we have people in enablement people that are already very versatile in Excel. So they're already working with data, not necessarily in a digital tool, but they're already working on the data. So it's showing them that by using their data on a tool, let's say a Tableau or a visualization layer, the numbers that they are seeing correspond of what they are expecting. Let them play with their own data, because then they don't come to you and say, oh, that was the tool. My data should show these numbers and now it's completely wrong. The tool is not reliable. So those two things, for me, so far, it's what I saw that works best to create that trust, is understanding where they are, how it fits in the bigger picture, what they can ask from their teams, and then also realizing that their data is correct by using the tool.
Mm-hmm.
I like it. And what works also very well on my side was like when we not publicly but in intranet when we were communicate our success story. This data product works very well. It generates this amount of money, or it saves this amount of money, this amount of time, and we document like regularly this success story, and that works well with the manager, of course, and the executive. And I wanted on that, Lisa, I wanted to ask you an important question, because often you have to, like you said, sell it to the higher person in the room that as an enablement program is very important. How do you measure the success and have the buying? I know it's a very complex question, but
Yeah, it can be very complex and it can be quite simple. It depends of, again, it's always the depends. It depends of the environment where you are. If you have a culture that encourages new knowledge and development, that may be a little bit easier. But measuring success, you have the easy KPIs, if we can call that, which are if people come to your workshops or classes, so it's the engagement there, attendance, you can track that. That is an easy KPI to track. In my opinion, doesn't translate the success of your program. It translates a bit of the engagement itself. The other way of doing it, and that is where you start, is a little bit more qualitative, but you start getting more of that impact, because it's all about the impact that this is having, these programs, the goals, is asking people, what were the new skills since you start this program that you attained? So which new skills have you gained from this? That, as you said, is just talking with people, surveys, having that focus group where you can go back and ask them, have one-to-ones with them. That is one way of doing. The other way, depending on how you are doing your program, well, I do love programs that are solution-based, which is more on use case-based. Not so much, let's create a solution. It's more, we have a business challenge. Let's start with design thinking. Let's see how we approach this. Develop, as we are developing, we are learning new skills, and then what is the perceived impact of that? And it may not be dollar sign to it. It can be, as you said, efficiencies, automation. It can be new insights, because before that you didn't have that data, and now you have access to that data. So those in the level of leadership, and as you said, buy-in is easier for them to say, yes, this is a great program. But it's not just that level of the leadership that is sponsoring your program. It's for that layer of sponsorship then to report to their managers. Easier to justify something when you say, this team has progressed, and this is the type of impact that we are already seeing in the business level.
that's great.
Mm-hmm. That's great. It sounds like a lot of it too, just with setting up an enablement program, like you say. Surveys, you can make surveys as complicated as you want them, but simple surveys are an easy thing to do. So it sounds like when you're measuring it, it's more about intention, and it's more about setting up those checkpoints. Just again, being intentional about them after you do that, to report back on it and to continually ask people and just to keep that dialogue open, versus, oh, I'm just going to run this training, this training, this training, this training, and then hope at the end it rolls up into some benefit that everyone will obviously see. No, you have to document. So I really do I'm a big stickler for documentation. So I really like that idea of like, well, if you want to measure success, it's just take regular checkpoints and whatever metrics you want to set up, however you want to define that. There are better ways, I'm sure, but pick something and then kind of stick to that and hope that, or try and connect that with what the higher ups are thinking. What are they looking at? What do they care about? And try to center your metrics along that.
Yeah, and that is where the user-centric kind of approach comes in. Because if you do that, you're already having that user-centric approach. Because when you have those touch points, asking people, what were the skills that you gained in terms, can be technical skills or even the impact, the value of personal level you gain from this enablement. You can also ask, what are the things that are working and things that aren't working? Because people learn differently and we have to cater for different ways of getting that information and learning from that information. So it's having that almost agile approach with user-centric altogether, where that is much easier for you to redefine a little bit the program and adjust than to reach the end of the program and think, this didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
Have to rethink everything.
This is a question for both of you, and it's kind of on this topic of being the person that does facilitate these things, the person that does check in on these things and plan these things. But what do you think the value of mentorship and coaching, essentially having someone who is a dedicated enablement professional, right? As you both are and have been, what is the benefit of that for people who are on this journey? What value does that? What difference does that make?
You want to start, Annabelle?
No, start. I will agree with everything you say.
The chatterbox, so stop me when. No, but for me, I love mentorship. So I love mentorship as part of the enablement. I love the mentorship outside of that. I do like the part where you have not only the person that is responsible or the people that are involved in the enablement do that mentorship, but people within, let's say, the data analytics fields that have more experience and have those touch points with people that potentially are starting. And it is very valuable for both. So for the person that is starting, it gives you guidance. It can give them confidence of what to do next. Sometimes in data analytics, we have so many options, so many pathways that can be overwhelming. So having that touch point is very important. On the other hand, people that are starting the journey can be from a different pathway or even coming out of the university. They bring so much energy, so many different ways of looking at things that you learn with them too. So I do think that is crucial to have those mentorships, even if you don't have as part of your enablement program, to have a program outside of that that will complement what you have. Annabelle.
I'm a big fan of mentorship. So I have been a mentor for Tableau, but also for other topics, for leadership. And you learn so much when you have a mentee. It's really both ways, I would say. And yes, it's fantastic. And I will say that it's often good when, for instance, your mentor, if you are speaking mentoring in data analytics, for instance, is not from the same department than you, for obvious reason, because you don't have hierarchical, but also because the data that they use are completely different. So you can have this learning cross businesses that is very, very insightful. So yeah, big fun.
I think the challenge sometimes, and I don't know if the audience kind of relates to that, is sometimes we have that willingness to start a mentorship, but we don't know where to start. Mm. So my recommendation would be just reach out to someone that you think has the job role that you want, or did something, or is on a position that you think maybe I could do this. I think I like this. Just reach out to that person and have an informal conversation. So mentorship doesn't need to be structured, doesn't need to be part of an enablement. And I promise you, you will have things to gain from that relation. And the person that is a mentor also. Normally, it's very hard by experience to find someone that you reach out for. Oh, do you want to be my mentor? Can we talk over a coffee? To say, no, I'm too busy for you. Mm-hmm. Just start. If you are thinking and you are feeling that, oh, I don't know how to do this, just start with a connection for a coffee and talk about the company itself and what you are thinking and see how people react to that.
Yeah, that's great advice. I think about that too, and the differences. when something has stuck. So I've only taken, obviously, being a marketing person for a data company. I'm not in the data tools often, right? I'm adjacent to them, but I've taken Tableau training a few times, and I can distinctly remember the times where it stuck the most was when I had a really good mentor, someone who was personally invested, someone I felt comfortable asking questions of, and someone who cared, to your point, Nisa, after the fact, who checked in and said, "Hey, how are you? Like, how are you doing? Have you built anything? Like, what's going on? Like, like I'd love to see what you're working on with this, with the skills that you've learned." And those people come to mind as making a very big difference. And the thing they all had in common was I was not afraid to ask questions of them, and no question was too dumb. And believe me, I had some dumb questions. So it was very heartening to have someone in your corner like that. And the power of mentorship. I think what you had said, Nisa, as well, with reaching out to people who are in totally different departments. I think early on in my days at Interworks and not knowing anything about tech, I remember we were learning about an old columnar database named Vertica, HP Vertica, and I had no idea how it worked. And that stuff, I was just barely getting to know what visual analytics stuff was, and I was just like, this is like a foreign language to me. And I talked to a guy named Josh Varner, who was very intelligent and very patient with me. And it was the same thing. I'm like, please fill me in. I have all the time in the world. I have a notebook. Let's do it. And I had the great benefit of running into him the other day at a restaurant here in town, and I got to say thanks to him. Like, thanks for those early days, for being patient and translating all that high technical information into marketing brain speak for me to understand. And so, from personal experience, I can really confirm that mentorship, even as much as having a great training program, even as much as having clear, easy to understand videos and how to's and stuff like that, it's the people that make a difference.
And it's a great source of knowledge, business knowledge. So let's say you already have that technical, but you need to understand the business. And sometimes you have people that are working in a business for years, like decades. And the amount of knowledge that you can have from a connection. And people like to share experience. That is what I find. People like to talk about their experience and what they achieved and how they did it. So it's a winning situation, I will say. You wouldn't lose to have those connections. And when we talk about networking, that is the beginning of networking. It's reaching out, putting yourself out there and learning from the others, and also sharing what you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I like that. It's the same. It's a little bit the same way when you have a viz and you're a little stuck with it, and you ask someone from feedback, and it's exactly the same. It's an external eyes that pick up directly what's wrong with it, or at least can be improved, and it's very, very valuable. And on this aspect, I also was so proud when some people sometimes reach out to me several months or years after I gave a training, say, "Oh, Annabelle, look what I have done now in Tableau." It's very rewarding for me. And on this rewarding aspect, Nisa, what do you believe is the most rewarding aspect of building data-driven culture within an organization?
It's exactly what you say.
A good one for you.
It's seeing people embracing. So people that weren't very kind of willing or were a little bit shy on getting into a program or embracing a new skill, and suddenly you see them coming in and talking and feeling confident about talking a topic. They say like AI these days. They went to a workshop and now they understand what is AI and what are the risks, and they can talk around that and they want to learn more. That is the part when they come back and say, "This was amazing, but I move on. I'm there. Tell me what's next." And that is amazing to see.
Quite a challenge for you, no? Because you have to prepare the next step, no?
Yeah, but then you will have different channels, right? To send people or to recommend. Because even ourselves, we are always evolving. We don't do an enablement program and that's it. Okay, I created an enablement program in 2008, and now I'm using that until my last day when I retired. you guys know that isn't like that. You have to evolve. The landscape in data analytics is always evolving. The software is improving. We have new software coming. All of that, you have also to evolve with the time. And you will gain those channels where you can also recommend to others.
Mhm. Mhm. I'm curious, this concept of advocacy and mentorship. A lot of times these individuals are people who run enablement programs, but I know as both of you have ran enablement programs and organizations that you have data champions, these types of people that emerge as people who are really kind of power users or passionate about sharing. What role do they play in kind of building up an enablement culture and an enablement program? And are they like your best friends and you're like, thank you for helping me out because you're the lone voice in the wilderness, and all of a sudden you have an ally to help you here? But how can they take a culture and really kind of amplify it?
So I like to call them a very extension of our teams because they are. They are just the extension of the team that you have. Because normally we don't have a big team to run this type of projects. And depending on the size of the business where you are, you will need people that understand the different parts of the business. And if you are a central IT team, you wouldn't have that business knowledge. So you are making really, you are pairing the best of the business logic with the technical skill that's you imparted on those users, your super users, and you are saying, go to your areas and share all that goodness with the areas that you are in, and showcasing how you can use the new skills, how that applies to you, because they will be the best people to do that. It won't be my team doing it. It will be them because they know the business challenges, they have business knowledge, they can even recommend, oh, you could use this tool or you could do this technique for this challenge that you have. So I see them really as an extension of the team that is trying to get the upskilling program going.
That's great. I love that. It's always fascinating to me to see those types of individuals emerge. Sometimes they're the people you would expect, but sometimes they come out of the blue, and they're the person. It's Fred from accounting, and you're like, wow, I had no idea he was so passionate about data visualization. But those are always the most fun ones to me, when you see it click with someone who it might not be, they use data, but they don't have an analyst in their title, right? Or they don't have anything like that, to see them kind of take over as a power user.
But what do they have is they have the pains of the things that they are doing at that moment. And if they see the value of becoming digital, they will be your biggest advocate, because it's like, oh, I managed to save I don't know how many hours, or now my life is much easier because I have insight into this. And that is that buy-in that we're saying into the business itself, because once you have someone that understands that and sees how they can use the new skills to address things that are real for them, not with dummy data, not with training data, but with their own use cases, you create that empathy. It's like your product. It's my business use case. I will do it, and this will be amazing, and I can take to others.
Mm-hmm.
And usually these people are really want like to give back. So when you have someone that really want to share his knowledge, your part as an enablement leader, it's easy. You just have to training technically on the thing that he doesn't know or about the tool or don't know yet, and he's already willing to. So it's an easy part for us to identify these kind of characters.
Mm-hmm.
And normally are already people that are quite passionate about what they do.
Mm-hmm.
You will normally find that people that are very passionate about what they do and how they do it, and you even notice how they talk about it. Mm-hmm. Those are your super users. And sometimes the super users can have the technical part, but maybe you have that user that has all that business knowledge and then can use others with technical skills to help the area where they are.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that's when you see a lot of really cool stuff, when you start marrying the technical users with the really passionate business users. You get them in the same room and they're working towards a common goal, right? Because I feel like this is a thing in organizations we talk about all the time in organizations, the siloing of organizations and different groups, sometimes having different tools and very different goals, and sometimes at odds with each other. But when you start getting them in the same room, talking the same language, and being like, oh, actually, we're all trying to do the same thing, which is provide value for the business, that's when some real magic happens.
Exactly. And when they come back to you and talk about, because even for the people that are driving the technical upskill, when they come to you, when they talk, oh, because we can do this or we can do that for this use case. And normally we will also recommend. So if you do that, why don't you add more data and have a view? And they will be the first one, oh, that wouldn't work for us because of reason 1, 2, and 3. And sometimes the conversation ends up with, maybe this isn't the tool that you need. You need to add another tool on top of this to be able to do that. So it becomes quite agnostic. You come out of just that technical know-how to, okay, let's address that challenge that you have, and let's try to find what is best for the challenge and not the other way around. So you don't force feed almost
Yeah.
into the tool, but it's more you address the challenge with the tools that you have. Those are the most advisable ones.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, Nisa, on another topic, because I see that the time is running. We could spend like another hour additional, but I don't know. You spoke several times about what the future holds. Do you know already like the future trends that will reshape the data enablement over the next years?
No, everyone is talking about AI these days. Right? Not to say that we are all ready for AI, but it's something that is already happening. It's not nothing new. There are new capabilities for sure. AI has been for decades already. Machine learning is just a portion of the generative AI. But that will change. It will change the way that we consume information and insights. Now we are talking about natural language processing. We have the models already with reasoning. So in the future, we may receive an email instead of being a dashboard that you click and you go to the server, you receive already like a report saying, this is what we see, this is why it's happening. So the way of consuming information will be different.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that the technical skill won't be needed. We will still need, because you still need that data literacy to know what will be truth and if it makes sense, not accept it just because it's driven by AI that everything is correct. So you still have to be careful with hallucinations and things like that of AI. But the way that we will consume information will change. And with that, of course, the upskilling programs also.
Mm-hmm. That's a really great point. I think about this in terms of, again, from like the marketing front, right? We think about information or news and how social media accelerated access to that. But the problem is that access, just because you have increased access, doesn't mean that there's necessarily not, garbage in, garbage out. We talk about that a lot with data engineering and with data science and AI as well, right? It's great if you have that, report, that KPI coming to you directly through email, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the data literacy to understand it, and you don't have the right data foundation practices in place to begin with for it to be accurate, what good is it? It's just delivering inaccurate information faster now, and it can accelerate problems. It can accelerate benefits, but it can accelerate problems. So that'll be a very interesting challenge, I think, for enablement and data professionals to deal with. There's that topic of governance and really amping up data literacy, right?
Exactly. Is that part of the responsibility and how to deal with that? Because as you said, you will have much more information, and because we receive it so quickly that people may think, oh, this is 100% correct. It was done by a machine with all this data. And then you have hallucinations that they already have in many things that Gen AI creates is one of the risks. And we know it has a lot of benefits, but it's having that knowledge and literacy to know this doesn't make sense. We need to investigate further instead of just picking it up and say, okay, let's act on it without having that reasoning behind.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm still not convinced about AI, especially on the enablement topic, because I think that we still are human and we still need this human perspective on it. And I'm not sure that I will be very happy receiving a long email instead of a picture, but that is how my brain works.
But then the development, it may be a picture with the insights by the side, right? You may have the two of them. Definitely, I think it's exciting for sure. We can see a lot of benefits. We can see a lot of things that we have to be careful and we have to have governance around it. As anything in life, right? There's always this excitement, but that excitement has to come with caution. The same way as when we use data, we have to have governance around it, or even when we do this upskilling program, you have to have certain levels of governance because the last thing you want to do also is people just creating reports just for creating because I learned how to do charts. But there's always that level of governance around it and how to do things and why are we doing this and how to approach it.
Mhm. Mhm. I think that's all the more reason, and I'll put a plug for you guys as well, to have dedicated enablement professionals to build up those relationships, right? I think that sometimes the idea when technology accelerates is that that will replace relationships. Oh, I can use generative AI or machine learning to essentially not have to talk to this analyst or that person because it cuts out the middleman, right? I get the analysis and I don't have to have someone build me a report. But if anything, I actually think it doubles the need for having an enablement professional to have that relationship to help contextualize things, right? So when you do have questions, you're like, I'm seeing this. Is this accurate? Or help me understand this, right? Because even if generative AI feeds you something, there's still a whole art and science into asking the right questions and asking the right stuff of it. And then when you're a data enablement professional and you've been doing that for 10 to 15 years, you tend to hear a lot of questions and you tend to hear a lot of things around what does this mean and diving into the context and the weeds of the data. So I actually do think as technology accelerates, the importance of relationships, particularly with people who are enablement and data focused, is going to be just as important.
And data literacy. So just this conversation we are having here, it's important for people to understand, even if they aren't using machine learnings and AIs, it's important for them to understand what is AI and what are the risks that we are discussing here. Because if we have that knowledge, then people will also think, I have to address this with a little bit of care instead of being, okay, I will just accept this and I will start using. And the governance goes from using data where you shouldn't be using it, sharing things that potentially you shouldn't be sharing. Like with data, you have governance on how you share your dashboards. You need that also in using AI and other tools. It's the data literacy that will be, I think, the foundation of any enablement, as it is already program. It's just giving confidence and knowledge to people to know in the big scheme of things what I do, what is the impact, and the same way how this can help me, and where do I have to be critical about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fantastic info.
Lisa, I have another question that I really want to ask, and I think that we asked almost all our guests previously. What kind of which piece of advice you will give to people who start their journey in data and analytics, or maybe to the advice that you wish you have heard yourself like several years ago?
I'll have two things that I hold very dear. One is be open to learn new things. Just carry on evolving and learning. That is your biggest gift that you can give yourself. And the second one, don't hold yourself to a specific technology. Just have that agnostic view of the world.
Mm-hmm.
Because that question that normally you well, in the past, you will go for an interview and people will say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Honestly, these days, for me, it's very hard to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what will happen in 5 years in the landscape of data and analytics?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, definitely embrace knowledge. Knowledge, nobody can take knowledge away from you. And then the second one, have an agnostic view of the data and analytics world and how everything fits together.
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
will be the advice you will give? So this question is for both of you.
This is interesting. I think I love that. I really do. Again, on the agnostic view, on focusing on foundational knowledge that can be transferable from one thing to another. And I think the one thing that I will say, and then I'll have Annabelle talk because she'll have more specific details. Right? Is I really do like the emphasis on the soft skills. I know at the end of the day, when you're looking for roles in data and analytics, a lot of times you're going to see you need to know Power BI or Tableau or whatever it may be. And of course, there's going to be those things that you need to know, but that those soft skills, as technology continues to accelerate and becomes easier for the business user, how you communicate about it, how you work with others, how you tell that story, those are going to be the things that matter more and more and more and more. And so that's it in my mind. In the next 5 to 10 years, if I were someone who were in this field, I would be thinking, yeah, learn the tools. That's good. But how am I going to tell a compelling story? How am I going to connect with other people? How am I going to, again, how am I going to learn from other people, that aren't like me, continuing to branch out that network and make it bigger and broader? I think is probably going to be the most important thing that I can think of. And I would apply that to anything, not just data and analytics, marketing, you name it. That's kind of the name of the game because technology drives everything. So.
No, I think that you have both spoke about this topic very well. Indeed, soft skills, they are very, very important. And I always make sure to learn a lot of different software. So when people say, hey, but you're specialist in Tableau. Yes, but before I was specialist in SAS, I know also Looker, I know Power BI, I know AWS QuickSight. Name a tool. But it's very good. And when you start learning one another tool, you see that, I mean, the grammar is maybe different, but it's there. Everything is there on the same component. So you just have to learn where it is and how to place it. What is very important in this field is really learn the best practice in best data visualization practice. And that is very important. And then you can apply them in every tool, I would say.
Definitely, best practices. It's if you have that ingrained and it's part of the soft skills itself, it's quite easily transferable. As you said, technical too. You talked about visualization layers such as Tableau, Looker, Power BI. So those, even if you have one skill in one software, it's easier then to pick up on the other one. What I was saying, not just keeping in one software, is just concentrate on that one and don't look to the others, because more times than none, you will be on a business and the strategy changes and you need to adapt.
Yeah.
Those are the things that you need to account as you are building your career and building your progression in the data and analytics.
Love it. That's all great info. I am going to, because we're about 5 minutes out, we'll open it to questions for people. While we're waiting on those questions, I'm going to ask one, Nisa, that you had included, which I think is really interesting, and it might be telling of something on your mind. But what is one data myth that you wish would disappear?
Can I say two?
Sure, yeah, as many as you like.
So having more data is equal to having better insights. That is a myth that I wish it disappeared. It's not more data, it's more quality of data that we should have. Not necessarily having more data will give you better insights. And the second one is on the back of the conversation we are having here, enablement is just training. So if you do training, you are able to do everything. So those two are the main ones. I could give you a third one if you wanted, but
Feel
I will
free.
share. So data visualization is just pretty charts.
Oh yes, I ate this one.
Those three are a
Make
killer.
it pretty. Make it pretty.
I love that. I love the one that more data is not always better. That's great. Yeah, and yeah, data visualization, pretty charts, completely agree. Those are also good though. And training and enablement, that's a big one. That is a big one from someone who, even working with enablement people, tangentially, that's one that I continue to learn more and more about, that it's not just training. And that's a big misconception for people who are in organization and all of a sudden they have like an enablement culture starting to take hold and they're like, oh, yeah, I mean, yeah, I've done the training before, or I've done this and that. Well, it's way more than that, right? So
Even for the leaders, right? I think the part that we start becoming a little bit more dangerous is you have a team and you think that just because you train them during a week, they will be able to do a solution next week. So the expectations are completely misaligned.
Mhm.
That is the risk of thinking like so.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can tell you, I can't tell you how many, little LinkedIn certification things that I've taken, and you go through the modules and you're like, yeah, I'm learning something, and then you get the certification, you put it on your profile, and it's 2 months later, and you're like, I can't even remember what happened at that course. I can't remember a thing. And that's the difference again between having another human at the other end who cares about your progression and development beyond you ran through 3 modules, right? That's the difference in what makes it stick versus I got a digital certificate that says this, but what does it amount to at the end of the day?
I know we are getting to the end, but that is the part of loving those digital upskilling programs that are based on use cases and business challenges. Because you will be learning the skills that you need to address the challenge. So it's more impactful at personal level because you can see how you can apply what you learned instead of just going through a standard training course, that then it's difficult to make that bridge between this is the training and this is how I apply it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The best way to learn is when you learn while not even noticing that you are learning. So that's the best way. Or when you are like doing like a visualization challenge or whatever, they are like learning something, new skills, but they don't even like notice or apply it directly. It's the best way.
You can see the value of it almost straight away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's such great advice. The best way to learn something is A, to do it, or B, teach it to someone else. I distinctly remember when I think back at university and stuff, like a managerial accounting course, which I haven't thought about that in a while, but the reason why I succeeded in that course was there was a group of us and we had to teach it to each other. And I was like, I never thought I would learn this, but here we are. But when you apply it, I think that's kind of the common thread. However you apply it, whether that's teaching to someone else or doing a challenge or creating a tangible output, that is the key to really making it stick too. Well, great. Well, we are at 1 minute on the hour. Nisa, Annabelle, thank you. Nisa, big thanks to you for joining us. This was fantastic. I really appreciate all the knowledge you've shared. I'm going to be watching this one back and being like, okay, what did she say again? To really make it stick, because there's just a lot of gems here, I think, for anyone who's building an enablement practice or anyone who's participating as even just a user in an enablement practice. So thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for inviting me. As you see, we could talk about upskilling, enablement, data and analytics for hours, but it was really enjoyable. And in the audience, if you want to reach out, happy to discuss. If you want to ask questions or just learn a little bit more, please, Annabelle, you can share my LinkedIn. So
Yeah.
We will.
And that's one thing for people who are tuning in. This we'll email the replay out to everyone, and we'll include all those details, and of course, it will post it to YouTube. It'll be on InterWorks social media. So this will be posted if you want to watch it again, or you want to share it with someone who you might find this interesting, or you want to reach out to Nisa and Annabelle, who would love to connect with you after. It'll all be there.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Nisa.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us too.
Yes, thank you everyone for joining us. Appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.